Hi guys, take a moment to relax, like and subscribe. Have you ever wondered how a goblin's day would be like? Do you think you could survive even one day working in caves, fighting for a piece of bread, Oregon, protecting your bed from other goblins? Today we'll see why you wouldn't last a day as a goblin. You awake to darkness, a darkness so thick and absolute it feels like a weight pressing on your eyes. There is no gentle sunrise here, no soft bed or comforting warmth. Instead, you find yourself curled on cold, uneven stone, your wiry limbs tangled in a filthy nest of damp straw and matted furs. Every bone in your small, twisted body aches from another night spent on unforgiving rock. A steady drip, drip, drip of water echoes from somewhere above, each droplet seeping through the limestone ceiling before splattering onto the cave floor. One of those droplets lands on your forehead, icy cold, rolling down the side of your dirt-caked face like a mockery of a tear. The air is stale and wet, thick with the scents of mold, sweat, and decay. Breathing it in, you taste a bitterness on your tongue, the flavor of rot and filth that coats the walls and floor around you. The stench of urine and dung clings to everything. This cave has served as your tribe's latrine as much as its home. Your first breath of the day is a gagging inhalation of this foul brew. It takes all your will not to retch. There is nothing in your stomach to bring up anyway, only the hollow reminder of hunger gnawing at your insides. Before your eyes adjust, you feel your surroundings. Your bedroll, no more than a tattered hide, is soaked through, slimy with mildew where it touches the stone. Something thin and wriggling brushes over your clawed fingers and darts away, likely a pale cave centipede retreating into a crack in the rocks. The sudden movement startles you fully awake. Your heart drums in your chest for a moment, instinctual fear that a larger creature might be crawling over you. But no, not this time. Just one of the countless vermin sharing this lightless pit. As you peer into the gloom, your eyes, well accustomed to darkness, begin to pick out shapes. Shades of grey resolve into the low, uneven ceiling hung with jagged stalactites like the teeth of some great beast. You see the forms of your fellow goblins scattered around you in this narrow sleeping den. Scrawny bodies lie heaped under threadbare blankets or huddled together for a scrap of warmth. Their breathing is a chorus of ragged snores, coughs and whimpers that echo softly off the slick stone walls. The nearest one to you is curled only an arm's length away, a scabby, wart-covered back rising and falling fitfully. The goblin reeks of sour sweat and infection. Even in the dark, you can make out the crusted wound on his leg where a rat bit him days ago. He's lucky it wasn't worse. Some nights, the starving rats go for throats instead of toes. A faint bioluminescent glow clings to patches of fungus along the walls, painting the sleeping chamber in sickly hues of green and blue. By this eerie light, you inspect yourself as you sit up. Your skin is pallid and tinted a sickly greenish-gray, filth clinging to every crease. Scratches and scars crisscross your arms from countless minor injuries. You flex your fingers and wince. The gash across your palm from yesterday's work has reopened, oozing a thin trickle of dark blood. Dried blood, some yours, some not, streaks under your cracked nails and across your knuckles. You lick it absent-mindedly, the coppery taste mixed with dirt. Pain is a constant in your life, a low throb in rhythm with your heartbeat from bruises old and new. This morning is no different. A deep ache radiates from your left shoulder where one of your tribe's brutes struck you last night, simply because you slept too close to his spot. The bruise is tender to touch, and as you roll your shoulder you bite back a groan that threatens to escape your parched throat. Shivering, you pull the tattered fur tighter around your bony shoulders. The fur, once perhaps part of a wolf pelt, is missing patches of hair and crawling with fleas, but it's all you have against the chill. The cave's cold, damp air leaches heat from your body. Your breath comes out in faint clouds of vapor that vanish almost as soon as they appear, lost in the cavern's gloom. You cannot remember the last time you truly felt warm, certainly not in the dead of night. Deep in this stone womb that never sees the sun, your stomach contracts, a sharp pinch of hunger that doubles you over for a moment. It's been 2 days since you had anything more substantial than a handful of dried mushrooms and a few strips of stringy rancid meat. Whatever that meat was, it's best not to think about it too much. Hunger makes all flesh equal in a goblin's diet. Now only hunger's hollow ache remains, gnawing at your insides as you push yourself upright. You know better than to complain. No one cares that you're starving. Every goblin in this cave is to some degree. Hunger is the constant companion of your existence, as familiar as the darkness that greets you each morning. A sudden bark of pain nearby makes you flinch. In the gloom, one of your tribe mates has been rudely awoken by another. You see a scuffle of silhouettes. One goblin has sunk his teeth into the ear of the other to yank him from sleep. The victim yelps, a high-pitched sound that quickly dies to a submissive whine. There will be no retaliation. He's smaller than his attacker. The larger goblin spits out a chunk of bloody ear and stalks off, leaving the smaller one cradling his head in silence. Such casual cruelty is an everyday alarm clock in your world. It's best to rise before someone finds a reason to make you their next target. Stifling a cough from the mold that tickles your lungs, you carefully get to your feet. Your bare feet meet the cave floor. A slick film of grime coats the stone, and you suppress a shudder as something squishes under your toes. You hope it's just mud. Balance does not come easily at first. A wave of dizziness washes over you. The air here is so poorly circulated that some mornings you wake light-headed, as if the darkness itself saps your strength. A few deep breaths steady you, though each brings that foul taste of decay. In the distance, somewhere deeper in the warren of tunnels, you hear the faint clatter of activity. The tribe is stirring. A guttural grunt echoes down the passage, likely the chief or one of his lieutenants rousing the others. It's not a call of kindness but a harsh command bouncing off the stone. Another miserable day must begin. You reach for your only possessions, a crude loincloth soiled with dirt, and a small knife fashioned from a sharpened scrap of metal. The blade's edge is jagged and dull, but you tuck it at your waist nonetheless. It's better than nothing, and you may well need it before the day is through. Experience has taught you never to be unarmed, even among your own kin. As you stoop to pick up the coil of rope you sometimes carry, useful for snares or strangling depending on the need, you catch a flicker of movement in the corner of your vision. Instinctively you duck, pressing yourself against the damp wall. Your pointed ears prick as you hold your breath, listening. From the low passage leading out of the sleeping den, a hunched shape lurches in one of the older goblins, his posture twisted and gait hobbling. In his gnarled hands he carries a makeshift torch, just a knot of rag stuffed into a skull, burning with a weak orange flame. The light it casts is flickering and feeble, but to your dark-adapted eyes it's blinding. You squint and turn your face away. Even this meager flame sends stabs of pain through your light-sensitive pupils. The elder goblin mutters in a gravelly voice as he shuffles through, jabbing at sleepers with a knotted stick to prod them awake. He doesn't bother with you, you're already up, but as he passes you feel the heat of his torch on your clammy skin. The smoke trails behind him, acrid and stinging. You cough again, quietly, as the sooty fumes scratch your throat. Another morning in this choking cave-bound world. Before following the elder out, you cast a final glance at the place where you slept. Already another smaller goblin is creeping toward it, eager to claim any slightly drier patch of bedding you've left behind. Possessions and space are fluid among your kind. Nothing truly belongs to the weak. You have no time or strength to contest it. With a resigned shake of your head, you turn away, clutching your arms around yourself for a semblance of warmth. Your day as a goblin has begun in darkness and discomfort. There is no sun to greet you, only the promise of more shadows ahead. As you shuffle toward the tunnel that leads to the main cavern, the familiar dread coils in your belly. You know that whatever this day holds, labor, pain, violence or fear, it will bring you no joy. In the gloom of dawn underground, you straighten your hunched back and bare your cracked teeth to the cold air, steeling yourself for the misery to come. Your hunched silhouette slips down a narrow tunnel, making your way toward the main cavern where the tribe gathers. Each step is cautious. The uneven ground is littered with debris that can twist an ankle or slice a careless foot. Loose pebbles clatter away under your weight, and you freeze momentarily at the sound. Noise carries far in these tunnels. You've learned to move as quietly as possible. Even here in your own den, drawing unwanted attention is always a risk. As you near the wider space ahead, a faint flicker of firelight dances on the slick cave walls. That dull orange glow is the closest thing to morning sun you will ever know down here. The main cavern is marginally larger and taller than the sleeping den, though to human eyes it would still feel oppressively close. Crude torches jut from cracks in the walls, their flames guttering and painting everything in wavering shadows. The chamber is a chaos of clutter and motion as your fellow goblins rouse themselves for the day's tasks. Piles of scavenged junk and loot are heaped against the damp walls, rusty metal scraps, cracked pottery, mildewed cloth, treasures of the gutter that only a goblin would value. In the center burns a shallow fire pit, the smoke curling up to the ceiling and filling the space with a gray haze. The smoke stings your eyes and throat, but at least it slightly masks the worst of the stench. You creep closer to the fire pit, drawn by the prospect of food. A makeshift cauldron, actually an old dented helmet stolen from a dead adventurer, hangs over the low flames. Within simmers a dubious stew of last night's hunt, a thin broth with scraps of meat, bone and mushroom. The smell that rises from it is equal parts enticing and repulsive, the promise of sustenance mingled with the rancid odor of questionable ingredients. Your mouth waters involuntarily, hunger overrides caution, and you inch into the ring of bodies huddled around the cauldron. There is no orderly line or civilized distribution of breakfast here. Goblins jostle and elbow each other, hissing and baring fangs to secure a share. A larger goblin, one of the chief's favorites, judging by the wolf fur he wears as a crude cloak, plunges a dirty wooden bowl into the stew and scoops out far more than his portion, chunks of meat spilling over the rim. The goblin next to him, smaller and slower, reaches for the helmet pot too late and gets nothing but a cuff on the ear from the big one. A snarl and a swipe of claws send the smaller one retreating, empty-handed and nursing fresh scratches across his face. You hang back, instinct screaming at you not to get in the way of such brutes. Your moment comes when the bigger bullies are momentarily distracted, growling at each other over who got the better pieces. Quickly, you dart forward and dip your cupped hands into the greasy, lukewarm stew. It burns your fingers, but you manage to snatch a meager morsel, a chunk of gristle and a few limp mushroom caps swimming in oily broth. Scarcely has the broth stopped dripping from between your fingers before you scurry back out of reach. A heartbeat later, a heavy club whacks the ground where you had been kneeling, swung by a goblin who noticed your presence too late. Had you lingered even an instant longer, your skull might have been cracked. Heart pounding, you retreat to the edge of the cavern to consume your hard-won breakfast. You crouch in a shadowed nook beside a pile of foul-smelling rags and bring your prize to your lips. The taste is vile, sour and gamey. Likely the meat was well into decay before making it into the pot. You chew resolutely, using your sharpened teeth to saw through the rubbery gristle. It's tough and nearly flavorless save for an overwhelming saltiness, but it's something. The mushrooms are slimy and bitter. You swallow them whole to avoid the taste. The warm broth, though greasy, soothes your dry throat as you lap it from your palms. It's far from enough to sate you, barely a few mouthfuls, but a little relief comes as the aching emptiness in your belly eases slightly. For a moment your body is thankful, even as your mind rebels at what you've eaten. Across the cavern, a sudden commotion draws your eye. The chief has emerged, a tall, lanky goblin with skin nearly black in the firelight, and a permanent scowl etched on his face. He carries a knotted cudgel in one bony hand. With an impatient grunt, he kicks aside a loitering goblin who failed to bow fast enough, and the unlucky wretch scampers off with a yelp. The chief's presence commands immediate attention. A hush falls as much as one ever can among goblins, and all eyes turn to him, including your own, though you are careful to avert them slightly, showing deference. You watch from your nook, tense and alert, as he begins barking out guttural orders. In your guttural tongue his commands echo harshly off the stone walls. He is assigning the day's duties, and his method is direct, pointing with his cudgel at various goblins and snarling a word or two. Groups start to shuffle off as they are named. A hunting party of 4 slips away toward the tunnel that leads outside. Clutching spears and nets, 2 stout goblins hefting pickaxes trudge toward the deeper mines. A scrawny whelp gets cuffed and pushed toward the latrine corner with a crude broom of twigs. Clean-up duty for the lowest of the low. You keep your head low, hoping not to draw the chief's attention, but fate is rarely so kind. The crack of the cudgel striking stone startles you. The chief has smashed it against the cavern floor, crack right near where you crouch. You flinch and look up unwittingly, finding his yellowed, bloodshot eyes fixed on you. He bares his crooked teeth in a grin that holds no warmth. With the cudgel, he points first at you, then jabs it toward another goblin across the way, one of the few goblins smaller than you, scurrying out from behind a stack of broken crates. The chief growls a few words in the common tongue for emphasis, something like traps outside, spitting the human words as if they taste bad. Then he barks a rapid phrase in Goblin. You understand his meaning well enough. You are to go check the snares in the woods to see if anything was caught during the night, and to be quick about it. You nod frantically, bowing your head to hide any sign of displeasure. A mix of relief and trepidation washes over you. On one hand, you've been spared the back-breaking shaft mining today, or the extreme danger of raiding a human farm in broad daylight, tasks assigned to others. But checking traps outside means leaving the relative safety of the cave and venturing into the open, where countless threats await. It's a duty often given to the expendable or the swift, and you're not sure which the chief considers you. Either way, you have no choice. Refusal or delay would earn you a beating, or worse. You quickly slurp the last oily drops from your palm and wipe your mouth with the back of your arm. The other goblin summoned, your assigned partner for this task, sidles up to you. It's Snagir, a wiry, ill-tempered runt missing a portion of his left ear, likely torn off in some past squabble, giving him his nickname. Snagir scowls at you, clearly unhappy to be paired with someone just as low in rank as he is. Without a word, he shoves a sack into your chest, a grimy burlap bag to carry back any catch, and jerks his head toward the tunnel that slopes upward to the surface. You clutch the sack and nod, knowing better than to speak. The two of you trot off, leaving the dwindling firelight behind as you enter a narrow passage leading out of the heart of the lair. As you ascend through twisting tunnels, the air grows a touch less stagnant and the darkness less absolute. You feel a faint current of fresh air brush across your face, carrying scents from the world outside, damp earth, pine sap, and something that makes your nose twitch, smoke perhaps from a distant hearth fire. The pale glow of daylight begins to filter in around a curve ahead, not bright yet but enough to make you squint after so long in gloom. Your heart beats faster, anxiety building with each step toward the surface. Outside is freedom in theory, but for a goblin, it's also peril. You recall all too well the last time a daytime foray went wrong, 2 of your kin caught out in the open by a roving band of humans. Their mutilated corpses were dragged back to the cave as a warning. The memory makes you shiver despite the slight warmth creeping into the air. Near the cave's mouth, you drop to all fours and crawl the final yards, Snagir close behind. A massive tangle of briars and roots obscures the exit, placed intentionally as camouflage. Carefully you worm your way through a gap, pushing aside thorny vines that snag at your skin and tattered clothes. A few pricks sting your arms, tiny beads of your dark blood well up, but you barely notice the new hurts among so many old ones. You pause at the threshold, half hidden by a mossy log, and survey the outside world with quick darting eyes. Morning light. Even under the canopy of intertwining tree branches, the sky's glow is enough to make you wince. The sun hasn't fully risen over the horizon yet, but a wash of grey-blue dawn illuminates the forest. To your goblin eyes it feels unbearably open and exposed. Every bush and tree casts a long shadow in the early light, and you flit between them, sticking to cover. The forest is thick here by design. Goblins choose lairs in dense wild woods where bigger folk seldom tread. All around you rise ancient oaks and twisted pines, their trunks draped in moss and lichen. The ground is soft with decades of fallen leaves that muffle your footsteps as you and Snagir creep forward.
The air outside is cool and carries the damp freshness of last night's rain. It might even be pleasant if not for the fear prickling in your gut. Out here your senses must stay sharp. Every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig sets your nerves on edge. Somewhere above a bird cries out the harsh call of a crow. You freeze instinctively, flattening against the earth, heart thudding. A moment passes, the crow flutters away through the trees. It was just a bird. You unclench your teeth, realizing you'd been holding your breath. A foolish reaction, perhaps, but you know that far deadlier things than crows lurk beyond the cave. Humans, elves, dwarfs, all the so-called civilized races who would kill a goblin on sight. In the stories whispered around the fire, they hunt your kind relentlessly, like though you've seen enough yourself to know the truth of it. A goblin caught in the open by a patrol or a ranger will find Snagir tugs at your arm, breaking your uneasy reverie. Together you slink toward the area where your tribe's snares and traps are set. It's a short distance from the cave, no more than 100 paces into the woods, near a faint game trail that winds between thorn bushes. As you approach, you move even more carefully, communicating in silent gestures. No one speaks aloud, even your hushed goblin voices could carry. You make out the first trap up ahead, a simple snare fashioned from a loop of rope, and a young sapling bent as a spring. It's still set, the loop open and untriggered. No catch there. You feel a mix of disappointment and relief. Disappointment at the lack of food, relief that nothing and not disturbed the area. Moving on, you and Snagir split up slightly to check the other traps, keeping a line of sight on each other through the brawl. You step over a concealed pit lined with spikes, empty. Thank the dark gods, falling in yourself is a very real hazard in this warren of traps. Then you spot another snare by a hollow. The cord is sprung, the sapling's branch standing upright and taut. The noose is drawn tight around something. You hurry closer, pulse quickening with hope. Snagir nudges and pushes in alongside you, eyes gleaming with hunger. Dangling from the snare is a small creature, its thin neck caught in the a rabbit, scrawny but still a precious fowl. It must have wandered into the trap and hung itself struggling. The animal's body twists slowly in the air, lifeless, eyes bulging and tongue sticking absurdly. Immediately the smell of fresh blood, sharp and coppery, hits your nose. With a rope cut into the rabbit's skin, your stomach growls at the scent. Meat, real meat, not fungus or rotten scraps. By goblin standards this is a bounty. Without thinking, you reach up to grasp the carcass and begin loosening the rope. But a low growl from Snagir makes you stop. He shoves you aside with his shot, nearly sending you tumbling into a bright path. He rasps a single guttural claim under his breath in goblin, flashing his brown teeth. His lone remaining ear lies flat against his skull. In warning, you grit your own teeth in frustration. You found it first, but Snagir is mean, quick to violence. He bears a rusty knife and slices the rope above the catch free, and clutching it possessively to his chest. The implication is clear. Object and you'll taste his blood. For a tense moment you consider desperation and hunger with caution in your mind. Snagir is wiry but strong in his feral way. He'd likely die before you could wrestle from him, and any injury you inflict would be double. Once back at the he has friends, scrawny as he. It's not worth surviving as a goblin often means swallow and you hunger. When someone tougher comes along, you raise your hands placatingly and back off a step, trying to show you not challenging his claim. A dark satisfaction glints in Snagir's beady eye. He grunts and turns away, already drooling over the cat. With surprising ferocity, he bites into the rabbit's carcass raw, tearing a strip of flesh from its side before the creature's body has even cooled. You watch with a mix of envy and disgust. The chief hastily starts his mouth, hot blood running down his chin. Each chew is a reminder of what you won't be eating. Suddenly, Snagir pauses and narrows his eyes as if realizing you are still the song person witnessing. Keeley intends to present this rabbit to the chief, but not before filling his own belly first. He jerks his nut toward you threateningly, gesturing for you to Then would you find you would you get and pretend to busy inspecting the empty snake that behind you. You can hear him devour another mouthful, bones crunching between its teeth. A pang of hunger twists your stomach, and a spark of anger flares within you. It's so unfair. You helped check the tracks. You could have claimed the fine, but in the brutish hierarchy of Goblin, this taps you turn to see Snag ear holding the rabbit by its ears, the carcass notably he shoves the remaining half into the bowl sack you carried, a smear of blood soaked through the coarse fabric. It's clear he means for you to carry the prize back. The weight of even half a rabbit in your hands is bittersweet. It will feed someone, but likely not you. Task done. The two of you make haste back toward the cave. Lingering outside longer than necessary is asking for trouble. As you retrace your path through the woods, you remain on high alert. Your pointed ears swivel at every forest sound. A distant snap of branches sets both you and Snag ear into a crouch behind a fallen log pound. You peer through the foliage, fearing a human hunter or perhaps a roaming wolf, but nothing emerges. Perhaps a deer or boar wandering far off. Still, the scare leaves your hands trembling on the sack's drawstring. Any second in this open world, Dipper could find you from arrow, fan, or sword. That knowledge presses on you with every heartbeat, until finally the familiar desperately thicket that hides your cave entrance comes back into sight. Slipping gratefully into the darkness of the tunnel, you and Snag ear exhale a shared breath. Only once you're well inside do you feel the constricting knot of anxiety in your chest loosen just a little. The cave may be filthy and cruel, but it is, and shadows offer some protection against the dangers outside. Snag ear brushes past you without a word, eager to deliver the catch to the chief and claim whatever paltry praise or reward comes with. You know he'll omit mention of his mid-morning snack, the half-rabbit in the book, but presented as if whole. You follow several paces behind as he heads to the main camp. As expected, when you arrive, Snag ear strides forward with a swag, holding the sack aloft. A few goblins hiss appreciatively at the scent of brush blood that wafts from it. The chief looms out of the dimness, snatches the sack, and pulls out the bloody remains of the rabbit. His lip curls, and he shoots a suspicious glance at Snag ear. He likely realizes something is missing, but either he doesn't care or can't prove it. Instead, he simply grunts and nods. Snag ear puffs up slightly with pride. The chief tosses the carcass to a subordinate to divide for the evening meal. None of it comes yet. Of course, you linger at the fringes, stomach growl, as even the scraps of the rabbit are doubled. But to others more favored, morning's duties are done, but there is no rest for you. Almost as soon as you set down the empty bowl sack and as thrust upon you, quite literally, a heavy pickaxe is shoved into your hands by a scarred goblin with arms like knotted wood. It's your turn in the mines. After all, disappointment sinks in your gut, but you did not object. The pick's rough handle is sticky with sweat and something done, and its iron head is chipped. You heft it and nod meekly. The day's only just begun, and all the exhaustion dips at your chin. With a resigned breath, you trudge along, as the work gang forms up, heading toward the deeper tunnels for the next brutal chapter of your day.
Along with 5 others, you are herded down a tunnel that slopes deeper into the earth, far from any sunlight. This is the entrance to the mines, really just a series of narrow shafts and pits your tribe has clawed out in search of anything useful. Long ago, perhaps dwarves or other miners dug here. Now goblins scratch at the leftovers, seeking ore, gems, or simply creating new secret tunnels to use for ambush and escape. The passage walls bear the marks of picks and claws. In places, crude support beams, crooked logs scavenged from the forest, brace the low ceiling. You duck under one such beam, noting how it groans under the weight of stone above. A constant anxiety gnaws at you that the whole tunnel might collapse and bury you alive. Such nightmares have come true before. Soon the fitful torchlight from the main cavern fades, and you're left mostly in darkness, broken only by tiny red glows, a few smoldering coals in clay bowls set along the path, meant to provide minimal light for those without the goblin's keen night vision. You and your kin can see in the dark better than any human. This is your one small advantage. In the dim monochrome of your sight, you follow the faint silhouettes of the goblins ahead until the tunnel widens into a cramped chamber where the day's digging will occur. The air here is thick and hot, surprisingly so for an underground space. With no ventilation, the heat of bodies and the few coals builds up, turning the chamber into a humid oven. The smell shifts from the rot of the main cave to a choking medley of dust, sweat, and metal. Each breath you draw is laced with stone dust that tickles your throat. Almost immediately you break into a sweat, droplets roll down your grimy skin, mixing with the dirt and forming rivulets of mud that trace your gaunt frame. "Work," barks the scarred goblin who handed you the pickaxe. He must be the foreman of this sorry crew. He shoves one of the smaller diggers toward a section of wall and points at the rest of you to take positions. You step up to a ragged stretch of stone that's been chiseled away over weeks. The rock here is hard granite veined with something softer, maybe an iron-bearing ore or just worthless quartz. Frankly, you don't care. You only know you must chip away until told to stop, whether anything valuable is found or not. Gripping the splintery handle of your pickaxe with both hands, you raise it and swing it against the rock. Clang! The impact shudders up your arms. Sparks fly where metal strikes stone, briefly illuminating your haggard face and the cramped hollow in which you toil. A few rock chips clatter to the floor. You swing again. Clang! Over and over, falling into a punishing rhythm. The other goblins around you do the same, and soon the chamber echoes with the chaotic music of labor, the ring of iron on stone, the grunt of exertion, the occasional hissed curse when a shard cuts someone's cheek or a vibration stings arthritic bones. Time loses meaning. Minutes or hours, there's no difference in this unchanging gloom. Your world narrows to the arc of the pickaxe and the next piece of rock to break. Sweat slicks your palms, making each swing harder to control. Blisters bloom and burst on your hands, salty fluid mingling with the dirt. Your muscles burn with exhaustion. Your back screams in protest every time you heft the heavy tool, but you keep swinging. You must. To stop without leave is to invite the foreman's wrath. The foreman prowls behind the line of diggers, a stout goblin with a whip of braided sinew. Whenever the ringing of picks slows or someone groans too long between swings, crack, the whip lashes out. A scrawny miner to your left cries out as the lash finds his bare back, leaving a fresh welt among many old scars. You hear him whimper, but he quickly resumes swinging, biting back any further sound of pain. You redouble your own effort, ignoring the quivering in your arms, lest you be the whip's next kiss. Stone dust fills the air, stirred up by the constant chipping. Soon you're coughing hard, each hack scraping your raw throat. You pause for just a second to spit a wad of grey phlegm. Gritty particles grind between your teeth. Half the mountain seems to have entered your lungs by now. But a glare from the foreman sets you back to work at once. As your pick bites into the wall again, you notice your strikes are weakening. The tool feels like lead in your hands now. Dizziness buzzes at the edges of your mind from the exertion and lack of oxygen in this stifling hole. Black spots dance in your vision. You're close to collapsing, body desperate for rest, but fear drives you on. Fear of the whip, fear of being labeled useless. At some point the foreman begrudgingly allows a brief pause. Perhaps he senses that if he doesn't, half his workforce will keel over and then nothing will get done. You and the others slump against the walls, panting. Your chest heaves as it fights for air that isn't there. The respite lasts only a minute or two, but you seize it. From a grimy pouch at your waist you pull out a small water skin. It's made from a pig's bladder, patched clumsily with tar. Uncapping it, you take a sip. The water inside is warm and tastes of leather and algae. It likely came from a stagnant pond. Still, the moment it touches your cracked lips and parched tongue, you sigh in relief. You allow yourself 2 swallows, no more. The skin is barely quarter full and you don't know when you'll get a refill. Water is as precious as food down here. Thirst somewhat quenched, you pour the last drop over your face, rinsing some dust from your eyes. The muddy rivulets trace down your cheeks like mock tears in the dirt. Before you can catch your breath, a sharp kick lands on your ankle. The foreman again. Break time is over. You stagger upright and lift the pick once more. The labor resumes with a collective groan. Every swing now feels like it might be your last. Your body screams for rest, but the idea of the whip, or worse, the chief's displeasure, forces you to ignore the pain. Suddenly, a sound cuts through the din of work, a deep crack from overhead like thunder in the stone. You instinctively stumble back from the wall, senses flaring with alarm. Small bits of dust and grit rain down from the ceiling. Another crack, louder this time, followed by a low rumble. A support beam at the far end of the chamber snaps with a report like a thunderclap, and a section of the ceiling collapses in an explosion of dirt and rock. Panic erupts. Goblins shriek and scramble. You shield your head with your arms as a cloud of blinding dust billows out, choking the air. Coughing violently, you blink through stinging eyes at the chaos. In the dim haze you can make out that a whole corner of the chamber has caved in. 2 goblins were working there, now one is completely buried under a pile of rubble, and the other lies pinned up to his waist by a massive slab of rock. His screams are piercing, raw with agony as he claws at the ground, trying to pull himself free. Instinct battles with self-preservation within you. Part of you wants to rush forward to help dig out the buried goblin, or lift the stone off the pinned one. But you hesitate, heart pounding in fear that the ceiling could yet collapse further. Others hesitate too, eyes wide and white in the darkness. For a breathless moment, only the trapped goblin's wails and the patter of settling debris fill the air. It's the foreman who moves first, though not out of mercy. With a snarl he pushes through the dust, gripping his whip in one hand and a dagger in the other. He assesses the situation with a scowl. The goblin entirely buried is likely dead. No time to bother with him. The other, still shrieking, is attracting unwanted attention and could yet bring the ceiling down with all his thrashing. The foreman strides to the pinned goblin, who reaches out to him pleading, eyes bulging in terror. Without hesitating, the foreman plunges his dagger down, straight into the trapped goblin's throat to silence him. The scream cuts off in a sickening gurgle. A few of your fellow workers flinch or whine at the sudden execution, but none intervene. You bite down hard on your tongue, suppressing a cry of horror. A mercy killing, you tell yourself, if such a concept exists among your kind. Mercy or convenience, either way, the pitiful goblin's suffering ends as quickly as it erupted. The foreman's glowing eyes swing toward the rest of you, daring anyone to protest. You all cast your gazes down, submissive. Satisfied, he wipes his blade on the victim's ragged tunic and barks new orders. There's no time to mourn, or even properly dispose of the dead right now. He commands a couple of the stronger diggers to start clearing the loose rubble, likely so it doesn't hinder further work or block the tunnel. The fully buried goblin remains entombed. His body will probably be dug out later, if at all, perhaps when the chamber is revisited. Maybe by then he'll be nothing but bones. Such is the value of a goblin's life here. If you can no longer lift a pick or hold a weapon, you're as good as the dirt underfoot. With the dust still swirling, you and the remaining others are ushered hastily out of the partially collapsed chamber. Your mining shift has been cut short, but not out of pity for your exhaustion. It's simply unsafe to continue there.
The foreman curses under his breath. This incident will slow production, and he may face the chief's ire for it. You keep your eyes low and follow the group as you all limp back down the tunnel toward the higher caves, coughing and trembling from the close call. As you depart, you pass by the limp arm of the buried goblin jutting from the rubble, fingers still curled around a pick that will dig no more. You feel a lurch in your chest that's not quite sorrow and not quite relief, a grim acknowledgement that it could just as easily have been you under those rocks. It still might be another day. In the Goblin Warrens, death is always one misstep or bad luck moment away, and it rarely comes with warning or honor. Back in the main tunnel, away from the collapse site, the foreman snarls at the lot of you to get out of his sight. The unspoken message, you're done in the mines for today, now go make yourselves useful elsewhere. Not that any of you are likely to be idle. Goblins who mill about aimlessly invite punishment. And so, bone-weary and coated head to toe in grey dust and sweat, you trudge back toward the inhabited sections of the cave. Your limbs feel like they're made of lead. Every muscle trembles from overuse. Your back is hunched more than usual. Spasms of pain rippling along your spine. You drag the pickaxe behind you. Its iron head scrapes on the stone floor with a dull screech. You probably should return it to the tool heap, but you haven't the energy just yet. Each breath still rattles with coughs as you try to expel the lingering dust from your lungs. When you spit, the spittle is dark with grit and blood from where you bit your tongue. As you limp down the passage, a few other goblins pass by on their own errands. One sneers at the sight of you, covered in dust, moving slowly like an old walk. He mutters under his breath that you're weak as he shoulders past. You don't even lift your head to respond. There's no fight in you right now. Perhaps he's right, you certainly feel weak. It's a sobering and frightening thought. In Goblin society, the weak do not last long. Your thoughts are a haze of fatigue and lingering adrenaline from the cave-in. But one thing is clear, you need a moment, even a brief one, to recover before whatever fresh ordeal comes next. You veer into a side alcove, away from prying eyes, a small niche in the tunnel wall, where the shadows are deep and the drip of water from a stalactite forms a tiny puddle. Here you collapse onto your rear, leaning against the clammy rock wall. The cold stone against your back offers slight relief to your inflamed muscles. Closing your eyes, you allow yourself a few minutes to just breathe and exist, doing nothing. In the darkness behind your eyelids, the phantom echoes of the cave-in replay, the crunch of rock, the scream, the gurgle. You shake your head to dispel the memories. It's over. You survived. That is all that matters. But your respite cannot last long. Even as you sit, your ears catch new sounds from the upper caverns, a clamor of activity, guttural shouts, and the distant clang of weapons. A ripple of tension passes through the air, reaching. Alarm pricks at you. Something is happening. Something that likely requires every goblin to be alert and ready. Trembling with exhaustion, you force yourself back to your aching feet. The day's not done with you yet. With one hand on the wall for balance, you begin to shuffle toward the source of the commotion, steeling yourself for whatever fresh danger now looms.
Your head throbs as you push yourself toward the clamor. The passage twists upward, and the flicker of torches grows brighter along the walls. Each step is agony on weary legs, but panic lends you strength. You recognize the sounds now. Angry shouts in throaty goblin voices, the high-pitched screech of alarm whistles, and above all, a clash of metal on metal that sends a chill through your blood. It can mean only one thing. Intruders have entered the lair. The cave is under siege. You limp into the edge of the main cavern to find it transformed into a battlefield. The dim, smoky space is alive with chaotic motion. Goblin warriors dart across the uneven floor, grabbing spears, swords, any weapon they can. The fire pit has been kicked over, embers strewn and sizzling where they meet pooled blood, and there is blood, splashed on the dirt, running in rivulets from the bodies of the fallen. Your tribe is fighting for its very existence. At the far end of the cavern, near the primary entrance tunnel, you glimpse the enemy, towering figures compared to your kind, moving with terrifying confidence. A human man in gleaming mail wields a long sword that catches the torchlight. Beside him an elf with cold, elegant features nocks an arrow in a longbow, her cloak flowing behind her, and to their flank, a stocky dwarf brandishes a heavy axe, his braided beard matted with goblin blood. This trio stands back to back amidst the swarm of smaller goblin forms, cutting down any who rush them. These must be adventurers or mercenaries, skilled killers come to exterminate your nest. Perhaps they tracked a hunting party back here, or stumbled upon the cave by foul luck. It hardly matters now, they are here, and they are death. Your heart leaps into your throat at the sight of one of your kin charging the human with a spear. With a swift motion, the man parries and ripostes. His blade flashes and the goblin's head flies from his shoulders in a spray of black blood. The decapitated body crumples at the human's feet, limbs twitching. A triumphant shout rings from the human's lips. You cannot understand his words, but the bloodlust in them is clear. The elf looses an arrow at another goblin perched on a ledge preparing to throw a rock. The arrow whistles true, punching into the goblin's eye. He falls from his perch with a shriek, disappearing into the darkness below. The dwarf swings his axe in a brutal sideways arc, catching two goblin raiders who ventured too close. One is cleft nearly in two, viscera spilling on the ground. The other is sent sprawling with a shattered ribcage, coughing blood. You freeze for a moment, pressed against the cavern wall, utterly dwarfed by the violence unfolding. Fear knots your guts. These intruders are strong, well-armed, and merciless. Goblin corpses litter the ground around them already. You see your chieftain, the tall goblin with the cudgel, snarl and hurl a javelin from a distance. It grazes the human's shoulder, drawing a spurt of red and a grunt of pain. The intruders can be hurt. Emboldened, a handful of goblins rush forward together, yourself caught up among them before you even realize it. Perhaps it's instinct or desperate mob mentality, but suddenly you find yourself in the thick of the fray, weapon in hand. At some point you dropped your pickaxe. Now you brandish a rusted short sword you've snatched from a fallen comrade. Your hands tremble as you grip it, knuckles white. A wild melee ensues. Screams, snarls, and the clang of steel deafen you. You dart behind a stalagmite for cover as the elf's bowstring sings again. An arrow skitters off the rock mere inches from your face, chipping stone. Adrenaline surges through your veins like fire. Survival mode takes over completely. You are not thinking, only reacting. A fellow goblin to your right is run through by the human's sword, a look of surprise frozen on his face as he collapses. Using that moment, another goblin, a burly one, leaps onto the human's back, stabbing frantically at the gaps in his armor. The human roars and staggers, trying to dislodge the attacker. Sensing an opening, you slip out from cover and scurry low across the ground. Your bare feet slide in the slick of blood, and you nearly lose balance, but terror keeps you moving. The dwarf is only a few yards away, locked in combat with two spear-wielding goblins who jab at him from opposite sides. He fends off one with his axe haft while backhanding the other with his gauntleted fist. That goblin tumbles away, skull likely cracked. Before the dwarf can recover, you find yourself almost unintentionally at his side. You snarl and thrust your rusty sword at his leg, one of the few spots his chainmail might not cover well. The blade strikes the back of his knee. There's a jolt as it pierces flesh. You've stabbed him, albeit shallowly. The dwarf howls in pain and swings around, his axe whooshing toward you. You yelp and throw yourself to the ground. The axe blade slams into the wall where your head was a heartbeat ago, showering you in stone dust. You scramble back like a crab, narrowly avoiding a stomp of the dwarf's iron-shod boot. Before the dwarf can finish you, another goblin intervenes, none other than the chief himself. He bashes the dwarf's side with his heavy cudgel. There's a crunch of breaking bone. The dwarf cries out and stumbles. The chief barks something incomprehensible. To you it's a battle cry, to the intruders likely just savage gibberish. Seizing the moment, several goblins converge on the wounded dwarf, piling onto him in a frenzy of stabbing knives and teeth. He goes down under the writhing pile of green-grey bodies, bellowing until a blade silences him with a wet gargle. The dwarf's axe clatters free from his lifeless hand. A brief spark of vicious triumph flares in your chest. Against all odds, one of the attackers is slain. The victory is short-lived. An agonized screech draws your attention upward on the far side of the cavern. The elf has been overrun by two goblins who managed to climb the ledge she stood on. But as they grapple with her lithe form, she produces a hidden dagger and slits one goblin's throat with almost graceful ease. The other she kicks away, sending him plummeting off the ledge to break his neck on the stones below. She then turns and disappears into the shadows near the cave entrance, perhaps realizing the tide has turned against them with the dwarf's fall. The human, bleeding from multiple wounds now, rallies to cover her retreat. With a great sweep of his sword he forces the nearest goblins, including you, to fall back. His chest heaves, armor slick with gore, some his, mostly not. You see fear in his eyes now, even as he roars defiance. In that moment, your gaze flickers to the floor, and you spot something glinting by the corpse of a goblin warrior. A dagger, with a polished steel blade, likely fallen from the human's belt earlier in the fight. While the human is occupied fending off the chief's relentless cudgel blows, you scuttle forward and snatch up the blade. It's far finer than any goblin-forged knife, its edge still keen. You clutch it tightly, a prize amid the carnage. Before you can decide whether to launch yourself at the human's exposed back with this new weapon, the elf's voice rings out from the tunnel, a sharp call in her tongue. The human curses, you know the tone if not the words, and slashes wildly to force space between himself and the encircling goblins. He then begins to back toward the exit, guarding his front with practiced swings. A couple of braver goblins lunge at him as he retreats. One is smashed aside by his shield, another impaled on his sword, but their sacrifices slow him just enough. He turns and flees into the darkness of the entry tunnel, limping on an injured leg. A visceral, collective howl rises from the surviving goblins as the intruders finally break and run. A few give chase a short way, but venturing too far outside could lead to an ambush in turn, so they stop at the cave mouth, hurling crude insults and spears that clatter ineffectively in the passage. Within moments, the echo of the human's footfalls and the elf's cover fire vanish into the night. They are gone. The cavern is left in flickering silence, but for the moans of wounded goblins and the crackle of scattered embers. The air reeks of blood and iron. Your entire body is shaking from adrenaline, from fear, from the sheer shock of surviving. You lean back against a wet wall, sliding down to sit amid the debris and remains. Around you, the tribe gathers itself. A few goblins dance in twisted celebration around the fallen dwarf's body, hooting and raising the dwarf's severed head as a trophy, smearing themselves in his blood. Others tend to the injured in their own rough way, which is to say, cackling at wounds or looting the bodies of their less fortunate kin. In one corner, you see Snagear, that sly goblin who took credit for the morning's catch. He lies motionless on the ground, an arrow protruding from his throat. His single ear is pressed flat in the dirt, and his eyes stare blankly at nothing. You feel no pity, only a grim satisfaction that fate meted out its own justice. In the end, all goblins share the same destiny, sooner or later. Your breathing gradually steadies. You realize you've been clutching the stolen dagger so tightly that your hand aches. Looking down, you force your fingers to unclench. The blade is sticky with someone's blood. You're not sure whose, but it's a valuable weapon, and you tuck it into your belt, hiding it beneath your ragged tunic. A small fortune by your standards, wrested from the jaws of battle. It might just give you a slightly better chance of seeing another dawn. As the adrenaline ebbs, waves of pain and fatigue come roaring back. A shallow cut on your calf that you hadn't noticed before now stings fiercely. It must have been from a stray blade or flying shrapnel. Your old injuries and bruises reawaken, joined by new contusions from falls and scrapes amid the fight. Every muscle in your body feels turned to jelly, and simultaneously stretched on a rack. It's a struggle just to push yourself off the wall and stand, but there is work yet to do, even now.
There always is. Under the chief's harsh direction, the tribe begins cleaning up the aftermath. 2 goblins drag the dwarf's heavy corpse toward the cooking fire. Immediately, the smell of singed hair and roasting flesh starts to fill the cavern as they set about butchering the body for meat. A pair of others head down the tunnel, perhaps to ensure the intruders aren't doubling back or to fetch sentries to keep watch through the remainder of the night. Meanwhile, you're tasked with a grisly chore, helping gather the bodies of your fallen kin. Though death is common, each loss still leaves a mark on the tribe's precarious numbers. You grab the ankles of a limp goblin, the one the human slew with his initial strike, and haul him across the dirt. His head lolls at a sickening angle from the force of the decapitation, though thankfully it's still attached. Another survivor lifts the corpse's shoulders. Together you heave the body onto a pile inside alcove, a makeshift morgue for those who won't see tomorrow. Through it all, you operate in a daze. The battle's frenzy has given way to numbness. You barely register the weight of each body you pull, or the sticky warmth of the blood that smears onto your arms. Some of the dead were goblins you knew by sight. 1 or 2 you even spoke with on occasion. Now their faces are mask-like and empty, returning to the same darkness you all came from. There is no time or ritual for them beyond this stacking of corpses. Perhaps come morning, if there's time, the bodies will be disposed of in the pit deeper in the caves, or used to bait predators away from the lair. Their gear, if any, has already been stripped. Resources must be reused, nothing wasted. When the grim task is done, you find yourself lightheaded, swaying on your feet. Hunger knocks you again, fierce after the exertion of battle. The meager morsel you had this morning, and the few sips of broth are long burned away. The rich, greasy scent of cooking dwarf meat wafts from the fire pit, and your stomach twists in both hunger and revulsion. Around the fire, a handful of goblins eagerly tear into the meal too, ravenous to care that the flesh once belonged to a speaking creature. Fat sizzles and drips from a charred haunch speared on a stick. A severed human arm, likely from one of the intruders who didn't escape, you realize, is being gnawed on by a goblin with broken tusks, blood smearing his cheeks. You force yourself to look away, swallowing hard. Such sights are ordinary here, but after the day's horrors, your mind reels at more. Yet when another goblin limps by and tosses you a chunk of blackened meat, with a curt grunt, you do not refuse. You catch it with both hands. Your nose wrinkles at the pungent smell of cooked humanoid flesh, but hunger wins out. You sink your teeth in and chew. The meat is tough, burnt on the outside and still bloody near the bone. It's horribly gamey and metallic on your tongue. You have to chew for a long time to break it down, but eventually you swallow the mouthful. A warmth settles in your belly as it receives actual nourishment. Whatever moral line might have been crossed means nothing now. Food is survival. In this nightmare existence, you take what sustenance you can.
As night deepens, a tense quiet falls over the caves. The intruders are gone, but every goblin knows they might return with greater numbers, if not tonight, then another day. The ear hangs in the smoky air like a pall. The chief stations a double watch at the entrance. 4 bleary-eyed goblins clutching spears and scavenged shields, peering into the outer dark for any sign of approaching foes. Others, utterly spent, begin to slink back to their sleeping holes or corners, eager to snatch what rest they can before the next ordeal. There's no formal ceremony to mark the end of the battle, no celebration beyond a few grunts of satisfaction and the gruesome meal. Life in the tribe simply continues, as it always does, teetering on the knife edge between survival and annihilation. You wipe the blood and grime from your face with a ragged strip of cloth, then hobble away from the main cavern. Your duties are done, at least for now. Every part of you longs to collapse, to close your eyes and escape into oblivion, however fleeting. Navigating through the gloom by memory, you reach the small nook where you had rested earlier after the mining. It's as good a place as any to sleep, especially now that your usual sleeping area is crowded with others or destroyed. With a weary sigh, you sink down onto the cold ground. It's not comfortable, nothing in this world is, but you've lost the ability to care. Your body is at its limits. In the darkness, the events of the day swirl in your mind in disjointed flashes, the snap of the snare catching the rabbit, the foreman's dagger ending a comrade's life, the human warrior's blade slicing through your kin, the taste of blood on your tongue. It feels less like one day and more like a lifetime of suffering compressed into endless night. You draw your knees up to your chest and wrap your scrawny arms around them, trying to conserve warmth. Despite the lingering adrenaline, exhaustion soon claims you. Your eyes drift shut, though the darkness behind your lids is no different from that around you. No gentle dreams await you, only fitful nightmares born of trauma and fear. In your half-conscious haze you see again the wide, hate-filled eyes of the human as he swung his sword at you, or the sight of the tunnel roof cracking above as the mine collapsed. You twitch and mutter in your sleep, a whimper escaping as a particularly vivid memory of the elf's arrow flying at your face jolts you awake for a second. Your heart thunders until you realize you're no longer on the battlefield. You're in the silent cave, alive. The battle is over. Slowly your racing pulse calms. Such night terrors are common. You and every goblin here bear these invisible scars of constant violence. Eventually even the nightmares cannot keep you from slipping back into unconsciousness. Your body's need for rest is too great. Hours later, or perhaps only minutes, time has no meaning in these lightless depths. You awaken briefly in the darkness. The cave is quieter now. Only the distant drip of water and the faint crackle of dying fire embers reach your ears. A few goblins murmur in their sleep, and one of the sentries coughs on the smoke. The smells of blood and charred flesh still hang in the stagnant air, a miasma of a hard-fought evening. You stir, every motion labored. Your injuries stab with pain now that the numbing rush of battle has faded. Dried blood, some yours, some from others, cakes your arms and chest like a second skin. Your previously scabbed wounds have reopened, and new bruises mar your gaunt frame. The cumulative pain is almost unbearable, yet somehow you bear it still. Such is a goblin's lot to endure, because the alternative is to lie down and die, and you're not yet ready for that. In this moment of quiet, loneliness creeps in. Though your tribe surrounds you, each goblin is wrapped in his or her own misery, caring little for the suffering of others. There is no comfort to be found, no loving family or gentle touch. You think back, if you dare, to when you were a whelp, huddled in a pile of siblings for warmth. Even that small solace is gone now, burned out of you by the endless struggle to survive. Here in the dark, you are alone with your pain. A ragged breath shudders through you, and you feel something wet on your cheeks. Reflexively you reach up, startled, thinking perhaps a cave drip hit you again. But no, these wet lines are warm and salty. Tears, actual tears, born of exhaustion and despair leaking from your eyes despite every instinct that says a goblin must not show weakness. Quickly you scrub them away with a dirty knuckle, but in the privacy of darkness you allow yourself a few more silent sobs. No one sees, no one would care if they did. What is left in you is a hollow resignation. Fear still lurks, of course, fear that the humans will return at dawn with reinforcements, fear of what fresh hell tomorrow's tasks will bring. But right now, in this sliver of night, you are too drained to feel it strongly. All that remains is a numb acceptance. This is your life. Misery is your existence from the moment you first drew breath in this cave, and it will continue until the day you collapse in the muck and become just another carcass for the pyre or the feast. The thought should horrify you, but it doesn't. It's simply the truth, as cold and stark as the stone around you. A faint scuffle draws your attention, one of the night watch swapping with another perhaps, or a rat dragging off a piece of discarded food. Such minor events are the drumbeat of the dark hours. You lie there, curled up, listening to the subtle sounds of the cave, the drip-drop of moisture, the skitter of tiny claws. If it's a rat, you hope it finds a scrap you missed, and the distant groan of a sleeper turning in discomfort. These noises are oddly soothing in their familiarity. They mean that for now, you and some of your kin are still here, still breathing. The threat has passed, at least until the sun rises again above ground and your kind must resume scuttling in the shadows. Gradually your racing thoughts slow, blunted by sheer exhaustion and the dark's embrace. In this half-aware state, questions float through your aching mind. How much longer can I live like this? Will it ever change? Does the suffering ever end? You have no answers. Goblins seldom think of the future beyond the next meal, the next safe sleep. But some small part of you, buried deep under layers of fear and brutality, wonders if somewhere, somehow, there is a better existence than this. A life not governed solely by pain and hunger and dread. It's a thought almost too painful to contemplate. Hope is a luxury you can't afford. Any goblin foolish enough to dream of a gentler life would likely perish, lost in such thoughts. A faint sigh escapes your cracked lips. Your eyes have adjusted to the darkness as much as they ever will, but there is nothing to see here but the same endless shadows. Better to shut them again, and steal a little more rest while you can. You shift on the hard ground, trying to ease the ache in your hip where a sharp pebble protrudes. Eventually you find a position marginally less awful. It will have to do. You let your weary eyelids fall. As you teeter on the edge of sleep once more, one final thought flickers across your consciousness, not so much a coherent idea as a raw feeling, the utter wretchedness of your condition. Today, like every day in a goblin's life, tested every fiber of your being. It brought you to the brink of death and terror, over and over, and left you with nothing but scars and sorrow to show. And tomorrow will be no different. In the face of that reality, it hits you how any creature born outside this nightmare could scarcely comprehend it, let alone survive it. What you endured in these past waking hours would break most beings, grind them down to bone and despair. But you were a goblin. You survived, somehow, thus curled in the bowels of the earth, surrounded by death and darkness you endure. And as the last vestiges of consciousness fade, one truth remains etched in the darkness of your... In a life as a goblin, even a single day is an ordeal that would break any outsider. Here, in this unending night, you understand with bitter certainty that this existence is nothing but suffering, and no creature of comfort or light could ever hope to last even a single day within it.